Welcome to Challenger Deep, athletes rising above adversity, where we explore stories of athletes who faced their lowest points and risen to incredible heights. Did you know Challenger Deep is the lowest point in the ocean, making it the lowest point on Earth? When you're at your lowest, the beautiful truth is there's nowhere to go but up. We all face adversity, but how we choose to respond defines who we become. Join hosts Jeff Hagee and Tammy Matheny as we share powerful stories of everyday athletes' resilience, growth, and triumph. These stories will inspire you to rise above your challenges and reach new heights. Let's dive in.
All right. Hey, welcome back to Challenger Deep Athletes Rise Above Adversity podcast. Today, we are honored and excited to have Dave Christensen with us. Dave has over 40 years experience coaching football at various levels from high school to college to pro. And he's an author, speaker, much more. We had the opportunity to recently have him in our summit for Igniting the Next Generation. He was awesome. And Tammy and I were both reaching out to him saying, hey, we need you on our podcast. And then we realized we were both having the same conversations with him. So we're excited to have you here today, Dave. Please give yourself an introduction and tell us more about yourself.
Well, first of all, I want to thank both of you for taking the chance to have me on your show. I certainly appreciate this opportunity. Yeah, so a little bit on my background and why I got into the speaking and writing the book is, I grew up in a low income area up in Washington, about a block up from the train tracks and about a block down from the housing projects. Faced some adversity early in my life, and so I wrote a book called "Your Fourth Down: Why You Need to Go for It." And basically, what my book is, it talks about, there are key fourth downs. If anybody knows football, fourth downs a huge play in football. But my thought is, yeah, they're huge plays in football, but we're going to all be facing fourth downs in life. And so how do we approach those fourth downs in life? And I had my first major fourth down when I was 14 years old and lost my only sibling to myocarditis. At that time was a real challenging time for me at 14 years old. I was in eighth grade, getting ready to go into high school. So football became kind of a salvation for me. I had made some decisions on how I wanted to approach things and attack things. I played football in high school. Wasn't a great player. I went on. I played in college. I was fortunate to have great mentors. My high school coach was a phenomenal mentor. I talk about in the book. My college coach, Don James, is a Hall of Fame coach. Was a phenomenal mentor. And then I worked 17 seasons in a row for a guy named Gary Pinkel, who is also in the Hall of Fame and College Football Hall of Fame. And I worked under him for 17 seasons. So I had great mentors in my life. And so, I think there's, a lot of young athletes out there that look for mentorship. And so, you know, that's why we coach, that's what it's all about. And so that's kind of what I based my book on. And then, I was not a great student in school. I struggled all the way through, and but I got a college degree because of the importance of education to my college coach, emphasizing that. Got my master's degree, and so I was able to go on and have some success. But it wasn't because I was a great student. It was because I developed some things in my life that I found would give me a chance to overcome whatever shortcomings I had. And so that's where I come up with my adapt game plan in my book. The first A is for attitude, and where, we all have the opportunity to choose our attitude every single day. And so, I have a great attitude. I wake up every day when my feet hit the floor. I'm going to have a positive attitude because it's a choice. And then the D is for discipline, and discipline was like, for me, it was my kryptonite. Like I said, I wasn't a great student, I wasn't a great athlete, but I could get up and push myself to do the things that other people wouldn't do, and I could do it on a daily basis. And so as I was looking for things to give me an edge to have a chance to be successful, attitude was the first thing, discipline was the second, and then because I had these great mentors, attention to detail became huge to me. And so I'm extremely organized in what I do. I've always been that way. Attention to detail. I have a plan for everything. And so that was the next thing that was important to me. And then the P and adapt is for perseverance. And we all have to persevere because failure is a part of life. John Maxwell talks about that a lot in failing forward, that, you know, we're all going to fail. There's only been one person on this earth that didn't fail, and so we have to understand that, and then you have to persevere. And what I like to talk about is turning our setbacks into comebacks. And then if you do those things and you live life that way, then you're going to score touchdowns in life. And then those are the successes that you have along the way. And then you refocus and you get that next goal and you move on to the next thing. And so really that's in a nutshell, that's my book is about. Obviously there's tons of stories in there because I was able to literally coach thousands of young people, which was as you guys know, in coaching, the greatest joy of coaching is the success of your young people, and helping them find a path and avenues to have success in their life. And it's really been a blessing for me. This book has really enlightened me to open up my eyes to the way I did things, and it's been an exciting journey.
Hey, this episode of Challenger Deep Athletes Rise Above Adversity is brought to you by doTERRA, the world's leader in essential oils and wellness products. Are you ready to fuel your health and recovery like a pro? Listeners of this podcast can get 25% off all their doTERRA products and supplements. Head to the link in our show notes or go to confidentathleteprogram.com/doTERRA and start your journey to peak performance today.
Well, Dave, I really enjoyed your talk in the summit. And Jeff, can we link that with the
Yes,
a
absolutely.
link to
We'll
the
put the
summit?
link to it in the show notes for
Yeah.
sure.
That was a great presentation. And,
Thank you.
as I'm listening to it, I'm thinking it ties in so much with what we're trying to do here with Challenger Deep. Challenger Deep's the lowest spot on the earth. And what are we going to do when we hit that? And we want to help give tools. And, so many that you've said, I saw Jeff taking notes as well. We're both just taking notes here. But obviously it's a great mesh with what we are doing. And I want to get into some of those stories and ask you some that I heard in your
Yeah.
talk as well. But before we do, I like to start off with a question,
Okay.
because we throw that word adversity out there like everyday talk. But what does it really mean? If someone were to ask you what adversity means to you, how would you define that?
To me, adversity is something that doesn't go the way you had planned, or the way you had expected it to. And so you have to redirect your path, and you have to evaluate why something didn't happen the way that you had planned or you had hoped that it would go. And then you come up with a new set of plans on how to get back on track, and attack that adversity again. Because a lot of time, I think the greatest story of adversity and then perseverance is Abraham Lincoln. I mean, right? And all these kids are in school. I mean, this guy was just failure after failure after failure. I'm like, I read the story a couple more times this year again. I'm like, there's no way I would have kept going. And yet, he didn't let his adversity, knock him down. He kept coming back and persevering. And so, that's the big thing. Adversity is fine because you're going to have it. It's like failure. You're going to have adversity in your life. Not everything's going to go perfect, but your ability to persevere and understand that setbacks don't determine. I always talk about where you start does not have to be where you finish. It does not have to determine where you finish. I'm a prime example. I'm a living example of that. I mean, I literally grew up below the housing projects, and I had to go be taken out of class every day for special reading. Okay, I had a lot of shortcomings, but that didn't determine my destination. I determined it. And so the ability to face your adversity and persevere and do it with a positive attitude, and the tools that I talked about with discipline, because discipline can get you back on track. And then an attention to detail. Well, I truly believe you have to have a plan for anything in life you want to achieve. And I've got some great stories on that, on preparing and being prepared for different things. So Yeah, that's in a nutshell to me, that's what adversity is. It's getting knocked off track and then finding a way to get back on that track.
And what I hear you saying, and I agree with as well, is we almost need it in order to accomplish anything worthwhile.
Yeah,
Well,
I really, I mean, I can't think of anything great that I have not had to work hard to get. Like things that are handed to you. I mean, it's just you don't have that same feeling inside, you know. To make $1 million and bust your hump to do it or win the lottery. I'm telling you right now, there's a different feel to that, right? You know,
I've
and
never
I
felt either, so I don't know.
and I used to tell my kid, you know, I would tell my wife all the time. I said, well, you know, make the kids pay for some things. I said, because when I buy their car, they don't care if they get a scratch on it. They don't lose anything. When I pay for their phone, they don't care if they lose their phone. They just get another one, right? But if it comes out of their pocket and they had to work for it, I think we appreciate anything that we have to work for more. And I grew up, you know, and so I got into coaching. You guys, this is crazy, but my first 8 years of coaching, I made $3,500, and I'm not talking about each year. I'm talking about 8 years, $3,500. That's about what I made. I mean, I was, you know, I got married. My wife made more money than me until she stopped work, and she was in the car business and supported us. Like it was a grind. It was a grind to get to where we got, but we had a plan and we followed that plan and but yeah, you appreciate, you know, let me tell you this, I live an extremely blessed life right now. You know, I've got a nice house in Arizona. I get to live in the sunshine. Now it's a little hot right now, um, but I have such great appreciation for everything I have because I've worked so hard to get there, and I've been blessed. And but I think what also helps you be blessed is a great work ethic. And so that's that's that in a nutshell.
You know, you before we got on, we were talking about the book, and you said, you know, there's a lot of the stories in there that you've used yourself. But as we talk about this, obviously you yourself and your own experiences have a lot of great stories about facing adversity, overcoming them. But first of all, side tangent, share where you've coached, but also have a story of one of your players or a team that really had to overcome adversity and how that helped them grow when they faced it head on.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. So I started out my coaching career. I played at the University of Washington. I was a walk-on. My varsity career consisted of two varsity plays. Excuse me, two varsity plays. They're on national TV though. But and the funny thing about that, that was back, I mean, this is 1980, 81, 82 when I played at Washington. My friend's family had actually VHS tape, videoed the game that day. Okay. So I had my two plays on videotape. And then his mom and his sister recorded Days of Your Life over it. So I don't know if those plays are anywhere, but I played at the University of Washington for Hall of Fame coach Don James. I finished. I wanted to get into coaching, so I wasn't finished my undergraduate degree, but I wanted to coach, so I transferred to Western Washington University and coached there for a year, working on my undergraduate degree. Then I coached high school for the next 2 years. Then I got married and moved to Eastern Washington, and I literally drove over to Eastern Washington. I went into the football facility, I knocked on the head coach's door. I walked in. I said, "Can I come and coach here for you for free next fall?" And he, you know, probably thought I was crazy, but he said, "Sure." And so my wife and I got married. 30 days later, we had $1,000 in our bank account and our two cars. We drove over to Eastern Washington. We've got an apartment. She went and found a job selling cars, and I coached for free and went to graduate school, and we paid for it. So I coached there for 2 years, got my master's degree. And finally, they paid me for one semester of tuition. Back in the day, it was a total of $400. So there's my first 400. All right, and then I got a job at a junior college. And then as soon as I took the job at junior college, I was there a month, and Don James called me and said, "Dave, I've got the volunteer position because back then, Division I football, you could have 4 or 5 graduate assistants and one volunteer." And so I said, "Coach, I'll be there tomorrow." And so I took the volunteer position. Now my wife had got moved into management and made a commitment to this car dealership. And so she had to stay there for another 6 months. So we had the long distance relationship. I lived in a friend who was a GA and his wife and their baby. I lived in their house in the basement with another buddy of mine who was a business guy working downtown Seattle. So we all lived in this house together in this little basement I was in. And I coached at Washington for 2 years, volunteered. So then my wife came back over and got a car job in Seattle selling cars. And so we were there 2 years. And then she had done extremely well at this time and was making close to six figures selling cars. Well, then my big break came. I got offered a job, an assistant coaching job at Idaho State University for $18,000, no benefits, no car. So we take the job. She quits the six-figure job. We both go to Eastern Washington. She gets another job in the car business. She's in the management now. And combined, I think we might have made $50,000, $60,000. And she left a job paying six figures so I could have this coaching job. We get fired there after 2 years. And now I've got two babies and I got unemployment, no job. Gary Pinkel calls me, offers me a job at Toledo. So yeah, I'm in, coach. And so I go out to the University of Toledo, which I thought was in the Midwest. It's actually closer to the East Coast. We go to Toledo. I get hired there in February, but there's a hiring freeze, so they can't pay me till July, and it's not retro. And oh, by the way, you have to pay your own move to get there. So I don't know. We spend every penny we have. We get our two kids, my wife and I, into Toledo. Don't get paid for 6 months. She gets another job, finance in the car business, supporting us. And so I'm at Toledo. I'm there 4 years, and then I become the offensive coordinator in January. But there's another hiring freeze, so I can't be paid the offense coordinator salary till July. And then once again, it's not retro. And so I'm at Toledo, so a total of 9 years at Toledo, and then our big break comes, and we had great success at Toledo, and get hired at the University of Missouri. And at that time, it paid like $100,000. My wife was able to quit work. Um, we got into football thinking, if one day I could make $50,000, be a high school coach, and support my family, I would have been the happiest guy in the world. So coaching was never about the money to us. And so the opportunity to go to Missouri was tremendous. Susie could quit work. We had three kids at that time. She could spend more time with the kids. We had great success there, which put me on a track to get the head coaching job at Wyoming. I went to Wyoming. I went to two bowls in the first 3 years. Was there 5 years, and I went to the University of Utah. Was there for a year. Had an opportunity to go to the SEC. So I went to Texas A&M. Was there for a year. That didn't work out. What did work out, though, is I still had 2 years left on my contract when I left. So I had my house in Arizona. I moved out here. I took a sabbatical year. The next year I got bored. I said, I can't not work. I went and knocked on the door at ASU, asked Todd Graham if I could come and volunteer. He said, yeah. And then the next year, Todd got let go. Herm came in, hired me. I spent 3 years on his staff, and then decided that it was time to retire the first time. So I retired for 2 years. I traveled, I played golf, I did, all those type of things. And then I got bored. And so then I had to, I'm like, one day I'm reading the paper, and not the paper, I was reading online Coach Scoop. And I said to my wife, I saw this ad, I go, hey, honey, I said, do you want to go to Poland? She goes, what? I go, they need a head football coach. She goes, send them your resume. So kiddingly, I sent a 10-year-old resume I had. I didn't even have ASU on it. There was misspelling and everything. I'm like, no, they'll never get back with me. And I'll be darned if 3 Zoom interviews later, I wasn't the head coach in the European League of Football in Poland. Never been, Susie and I had never been to Europe, and I am now the head football coach in Poland. So we go over there, and in the first year we took a team that's not very good. By the way, there's not a lot of football in Poland, and you have to
I
have
was going
about
to ask that.
80% of your team has to be local. So
Okay.
but we got in the playoffs, 17 teams, 6 teams in the playoffs. We made the playoffs. I went back the next year. I really didn't want to. I did. I had some dispute with the owner, and I'm like, I love my country. I love being in America. I'm like, why am I over here? If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it for people, kids, and families and people in America. If I'm going to spend time with people, I'm going to spend it with my friends and my people there. And so got back home, haven't left the country since, except to cruise up to Alaska and back. And now I'm just, I set out last year to write this book. Started writing this book about the 1st of January and published it the end of April. So that's where we're at now. You asked about the story of adversity, and I've got a great story of a young man who had to persevere through adversity. So I'm the offensive coordinator at the University of Missouri, and we're getting ready to start, which would have probably been the 2005 season, right in that time. And so it's the day before training camp. And we have a young man on our team who's a freshman. His name's Jeremy Macklin. And Jeremy was the only 5-star athlete we had signed at the University of Missouri. High level wide receiver. Jeremy, I think, was going to go to Oklahoma at one time. Yeah, we got him turned around and got him committed. And he came. And so the players in the summertime would come out in the evenings and they'd do 7-on-7. It was player run workouts. And the day before we started training camp, Jeremy Macklin, his freshman year, blows out his ACL. And I mean, you want to talk about devastating. I mean, this is obviously a difference maker, high level player for us. So obviously, Jeremy, went through some emotional things and it was hard, but he attacked his rehab after his surgery like nobody I'd ever been around. Okay. Now you understand he did this the beginning of August, he blew out his ACL. Okay. So you got August, September, October, November. There's 4 months, and then December is bowl season, right? Well, we're practicing for our bowl game in December, and Jeremy Macklin is back in practice. And the next month, Jeremy Macklin runs a sub 4:40 electronic time. Okay. Fast forward 2 years, Jeremy Macklin is a first-round draft pick. And this kid worked so hard in rehab to get himself back and better than he was before. And I'm just telling you, I've seen a lot of ACLs. Most guys are 6 months to 8 months to a year. 4 months later, he practiced. It was the most phenomenal story of perseverance I'd ever seen. And to watch him go into the training room every day, and early on, if you've ever had surgeries, you know how gruesome it is early on to get the scar tissue and all that stuff, get the swelling out, working hard, just coming back. And the guy just did it with such a great attitude every single day. He attacked his workouts and his rehab, came back, had 2 All-American years for us, and was a first-round draft pick. And so I talk about his story of perseverance all the time when I talk about perseverance in my speaking engagements, because to me it's probably one of the greatest accomplishments from a person, from a setback, turning a setback into a comeback, an ACL blown out completely, to playing 4.5 months later and being a first-round draft pick and doing it with such a great attitude. So.
That reminds me a lot of Adrian Peterson's story, but yet he came back even
Yes.
sooner than AP did.
Yeah. So in fact, those are probably the two. I've not heard of any other stories like that other than Adrian Peterson and Jeremy Macklin. Yeah. Really phenomenal.
You're right up my
That's-
alley right now. Next week, the injured athlete, a mental game plan to overcoming recovery, is coming out, being released. So I've been studying what separates that. So along with that, what do you think if you could pull one trait from Jeremy that set him apart, that allowed him to come back so quick?
I put it all on attitude, because here's the deal with Jeremy. Jeremy, kids like to make excuses. We had a sign hung in all of our meeting rooms. It was in all our playbooks called "No Excuses." As a poem on, not making excuses. We didn't allow for excuses. And Jeremy never had an excuse. He was on time to every rehab session. He did it with a positive attitude. Every time they would set a new target, he would reach it faster. It was a mindset that he had. It was, he approached everything with a great attitude. He was a great team player. This guy was the best player we had. Chase Daniel, our quarterback, was pretty good, so he was fourth in the Heisman, so he was good too. But Jeremy was probably the best receiver to ever play there. But he came every day with a great attitude. In fact, he came to me my last season. The season was over. I think we might have been getting ready for it. It was after our bowl game, and I was going to go to Wyoming. And Jeremy had another year of eligibility left. And he came in, he said, "Coach," he goes, I'm really torn between going to the NFL or coming back. And I said, "Jeremy," I said, "why?" I said, "No other student's going to leave this university as a graduate and make $14 million this year. You can. And guess what, Jeremy? You can always come back and finish your degree. But you could also get hurt and not have that opportunity." Jeremy went out, was a first round draft pick, had a great NFL career, came back, got his degree as a high school coach now in St. Louis. And what a great role model for those young people. I mean, yeah, he just great mindset. And it's funny, you guys, because and I truly believe this because again, I lack in a lot of abilities in a lot of areas, but attitude can do so many things for you, just approaching things with the right attitude. I'm going through. I was telling Jeff, I had my ankle replaced 11 days ago, and so I'm in that process and you know what? Even at my age, injuries are frustrating. Having that surgery is frustrating because it won't go as fast as you want it to go, but you still got to approach it, with a great attitude. You got to do the things on a daily basis over and over and over. And that's where discipline comes in. And so attitude, discipline, um, they work hand in hand.
I love that. That's exactly the message we need for this podcast because it's just adding to what we've done in the book, and we want our listeners to be able to listen to these stories and say, okay, when I face adversity, that's how I'm going to get through it. And so, like with Jeremy, attitude being such an important part of it. That's what we want our listeners to be able to see, whether it's a young athlete that blows out his ACL or a coach that just got his ankle replaced. How much is the attitude going to help them? Because how many athletes have that injury and never come back because they got beat in their mind? And so that attitude is so important. So really appreciate you sharing that. That's a great story.
Thank you. Thank you. If you don't mind, can I give you another story on attitude? Because again, I got one of the greatest
Absolutely.
story. I recruit this young man named Jason Ray out of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Okay. And he's a wide receiver, Broken Arrow. He's a good athlete. He's not a burner, but he runs well. But he's just a phenomenal young man. I got to know his family very, very well. And just, hardworking folks. His mom worked at the school, so she could be there where her kids were in school. While they're in high school, she worked in the school, in the cafeteria, just so she could be there while her kids were in high school. Dad worked for UPS, great family. So Jason ends up signing day signs with us, comes to Missouri, and this kid has just got a phenomenal attitude every day, no matter what it is, no matter what happens, no matter what we're doing. He's got the greatest attitude. And so we start doing, he gets through a year or two of the program. And then, so what we do is in the off season, we have our I think it was 5:30 in the morning, we'd do our conditioning in the winter. And so they would come, it was called our winning edge program. And it was grueling. It was a rear end kicker. And so they'd get there and we'd have we'd do a warm up, we'd have three groups, and it was very, very intense, high level. We had people that had been in the military come through and try it, and they said that way tougher than going through military training. So pretty tough stuff. So he would come in and he had war paint on, and he'd have his face all camouflage and war paint, and just, but the first guy in line, and just, always out front, always leading, always positive, always energetic. And then, we get to practice, and even though he wasn't a starter, he would be in the front of the lines. He'd give great effort all the time. Well, the spring before Jason's senior year, we voted for captains. Okay. And lo and behold, Jason gets voted team captain. But here's the other part of the story. Jason Ray never started a football game at the University of Missouri. Never started a game. He played on special teams, played a little bit as a wide receiver, but because of his attitude every single day, his teammates thought he was the greatest leader on the team, and I always say a positive winning attitude fuels resilience and action. And that's what he did, because every single day, he would come out there and just, and the other thing, and I talk about this a lot, I show this little clip in my talks, is nobody wants to be around a Debbie Downer. You guys remember Debbie Downer from Saturday Night Live? Like, nobody wants to be around that kind of attitude, right? Because attitudes are contagious, and obviously, a negative attitude can be contagious as well. So the story doesn't stop with Jason, though. So Jason finishes his degree. He actually goes back to I think it's South Carolina, and he's doing some training with NASCAR because they want athletes in the pit crew. And so, he knew some people in NASCAR, whatnot. Anyhow, he comes back to the University of Missouri. He's now doing an internship in the athletic department. He's never coached a day in his life. I get hired as the head football coach at Wyoming. The very first person I hire as an assistant football coach for me at Wyoming is Jason Ray. And just because I knew when he went into a young person's home, what they were going to get. I knew on our staff what they were going to get, what those players were going to get. He ended up being a phenomenal coach, coached a few years for me, and then Oklahoma State stole them from me, and then Kansas State. He coached a number of different places. He's now very, very successful. What he does is he goes to colleges and talks to them about financial literacy, athletes, and getting them started on building some financial plan for their future. And he also has a farm. He has cows. He also does a fundraising business. I mean, this guy is phenomenal. But and I talk to him still probably every other week. His attitude has never changed since he was in high school. And so, just the ability to have that type of attitude, and what it does to those around you is incredible.
And
You
I
know
think
what's
that's
really
such an
cool about
important
that
part.
story?
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Jeff.
just
I'm
gonna
sorry.
say what's really cool about that story is something that we talked about at the very beginning is, you don't know the path you're going to take. And when he was in high school, there's no way he could have projected that I'm going to go play, I'm going to go work at NASCAR, I'm going to go coach at all these different places. And his attitude and his discipline and all these things you've been talking about this whole time are the reason he's had such an incredible career.
Yeah.
Too often, and I hope this message really resonates with athletes listening. They think their dreams or their attitudes really, sink when they don't get that starting position, or when they don't get the role they want, and they check out mentally. And so never is any opportunity. Instead of recognizing I might not get what I want in this short term, but it's setting me up for long term. So I really appreciate it. I'm glad that you shared that message.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't imagine had Jason not had the attitude he had. I mean, the success he's having in life. Now he obviously had good parents at home and everything, but the success is his attitude. His attitude is everything. I hired him, never coached it down. I gave him a Division I college football job, and there's only a few thousand of those jobs available. Because it was all because of his attitude, and obviously he carried that attitude along in his coaching, and he was is excited and energetic as a coach as he was as a player. And you're right, Tammy. I'll tell you, not everybody can be the starter, but everybody has a role, and if everybody treats their role as it being important, which it is, and accepts their role, great things can happen for them because you never know what's around the corner.
And I
I'm gonna
want
put
to
a link
tie
to Tammy's
several
article, Battle of the Bench.
I was
That's-
in that battle.
Um, but you've mentioned that, I think, something I want to tie together, because I want to go back to it about your wife, and how she supported and gave up almost the starting role for you to have the role. And then you're sharing this story and the importance of unity to overcome adversity. And I think too often we think we can create success alone, but how we do need support of others, or to support others, in order to rise above the adversity. So it sounds like you had a very good backbone there with your wife, and that, through the stories, I see that constant message coming up as well.
Yeah, there's no question. I have no chance to do what I did in my career without my wife. I was fired 3 times. We were smacked with adversity. Young kids losing jobs, but she always was supportive. You know, she had a good job, but she walked away from, didn't bat an eye, because the goal was always my career, our career, our kids' career. We lived this coaching career as a family. And so, and the great thing about it, and the thing that really frustrates me with a lot of coaches in this day and age is, when I was working for Gary Pinkel, starting in 1997, we went home after practice every day. And I had dinner with my kids. I put my kids to bed. We didn't work after practice. We came in the morning, we started work. And well, I had become the head coach at Wyoming. We implemented the same thing, that you had to be out of my office by 6 o'clock. At the absolute latest, you had to be out of the office at 6 o'clock. We'd come in the morning. Now, your wife would have to probably get the kids ready, take them to school, but you would be home to help cook dinner, to help bathe the kids, to put the kids to bed, to spend time with your wife, because Susie and I felt that that was the most important thing that we could do for our coaching staff, so that I would get, what I want to do philosophically is, I wanted my guys to wake up in the morning and be excited about coming to work, wanting to get to work. And so, that was the atmosphere that we built. There's so many people that want to brag about the number of hours they work. They don't really work. They sit around BS and pretending they're working. And my whole thing is, listen, let's be efficient. Let's get our work done. We're not going to not do things. We're going to get our stuff done, but let's get it done with efficiency. Let's not waste time. And then you got to go do the most important job of your day, and that's once you walk in those doors at home. And so that's kind of the philosophy that I try to develop with my staff, and the understanding that, I think you can do it in coaching and still be present in your family's life. And so that was always really, really important to me.
I love that, and that is rare today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
One more story, but we're going to connect it to Challenger Deep. So I know before
Okay.
we got on here, you were, had said you had read some of the stories in the book, and that you use some of them as well in your messaging. You have to pick one. Which one would you want to share, that you feel would really resonate with any athlete, parent, or coach out there going through adversity?
Oh man, the story out of your book.
Yes, one in from the Challenger
Okay.
Deep book.
Okay, because I went
Put
through
you on the
these
spot
things.
here. I know you were
I
rolling
know.
the smoke before we got on here.
Uh, Man, I read through this. I like the Nancy Lopez one. I like I was a big Chicago Bulls guy. I was a big Pat Riley guy. I read, some stuff in there. I wanted to talk about the Bannister story, because I was just telling Jeff
Yeah.
that I've been researching that, and I find that phenomenal. I think you got a lot of other stuff. They're not all on adversity. Oh my goodness, you're putting me on the spot now.
Go with Bannister. I thought I was giving you a softball there.
That one is because, and that's really, to me, that's mindset. That's when you think about how long people tried to break the 4 minute mile. Okay. And a lot of young people don't know the story because this story happened a while back. Okay.
Mhm.
But I still think there's a lot of history in this thing when you look at it because, people tried and tried and tried to break the 4 minute mile. Many, many times they said, this is impossible. It won't happen. It can't happen. And so for years and years and years, people competed to try to break that mark. And I find, the most amazing thing about it is once Roger Bannister broke that 4 minute mark, that 500 people broke that mark in the next 6 months, or something close to that, right? That's here. It's not physical. It's not the ability. They all had the ability to run the 5 minute mile, but it was here that once they saw that it could be done, then all of a sudden they started doing it. And so many athletes that they look at things and okay, and they, you know well, I can't do that. Well, why can't you do that until till you try, till you've given it everything you've got? You'll be surprised at what you can do. You can do more than what your mind, and you know what, and that's kind of what my philosophy in coaching is. I'm going to do a podcast later today on coaching with my friend who's the lead instructor for Troon Golf. And what I talk about is our job as a coach is to help take these athletes to places they can't take themselves. That was my goal in coaching. I want to take you to places that I know you can't take yourself because it's just hard to do it psychologically by yourself. You need somebody to help give you the path, to push you, to support you, and so the mind is huge. We spent a lot of time with our team going through mental visual vision. I'm losing my word. Visual. What's the term?
Visualization.
Visualization.
Visualization. Sorry about that. But a lot of that. I would every Friday go in and meet with the offensive side of the ball. I was the offensive coordinator, and I'd have them sit and I'd get them comfortable in their chairs. I want them to lay back on, and I didn't do that very often. Most of the time, feet on the ground, eyes up, lay back, close your eyes, and listen. And then I would call where the ball was placed, and I would go through the play. I would call out the personnel, the formation, the play, and they would mentally go through the play. Okay. And I'd go through the first 10 or 15 plays of every game. Well, we scored on 9 of 11 games on our first drive.
Love it.
I would say the mental part of it's pretty important. And so,
Right.
yeah, I just think that, the mind, that the Roger Bannister story of all those people doing it afterwards, because now they're like, oh, that can be done. And sometimes, if we can find something to trigger them that, hey, that can be done without being the first, seeing it happen first. Um, anyhow, I just think it's great stuff. Like all the stories in your guys' book. I mean, I've got some time on my hands now. All I do is sit until I can get going again. And so I picked your book up on, I think it was on Friday, and read through the whole thing. So it was awesome. You guys are doing great stuff, man. What you guys do for athletes is so needed. And I get frustrated sometimes because parents want to pay all this money to have personalized coach to get themselves a Division I scholarship, and they need a mind coach, right? They're going to go to
Amen.
practice and they're going to swing bats, but they don't have experts there that work with the mental part of the game, and trained in how to handle adversity, and the things that you guys are doing, I think, are just phenomenal.
Thank
So
you.
We spend so much time on the physical skills and that often the mental's neglected. But Jeff,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I jumped in on you again.
No, that's great. And appreciate that, Dave, and appreciate your feedback on all of that. There's 4 things I want to talk about. One,
Okay.
obviously, our book, Challenger Deep Athletes Rising Above Adversity. If you've enjoyed listening to these stories and whatnot, we want you to get a copy of the book. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on tammymatheny.com. You can get it on jeffhagee.com/free book. There it is. Thank you, Dave. The other thing, and maybe Tammy talk about it since you're wearing the swag.
We got new swag, the
Confident
Confident Athlete.
athlete. Yeah,
Yes.
like it.
And This Is Good. This Is Good is a book I've written. It's comes from an African folktale that nothing's really good or bad till we decide it is. And if we can keep our brains open alive long enough, then something different, often better, is going to replace it. So Jeff and I have started that the past 2 months. So anyone listening,
Nice.
make sure you get your swag.
Yeah, and you can get it. Tammy has a link on her website, tammymatheny.com, but you can also go to confidentathleteprogram.com/store, and that will take you there. The third thing I want to talk about, Dave, let's talk a little bit more about your book, where you can get it, and anything you want to share
Yeah.
about the book.
Yeah, so my book, you can get it on Amazon, or if you go to coachchristensen.net and order it on my website, I'll personally sign and send out each of those books. So coachchristensen.net is my website. It's obviously you can spell coach, but Christensen, CHRISTENSEN.net, or Amazon. And yeah, you can get it there. I think I've had a lot of positive feedback from it. I think it's when I set out to write the book, I wanted something that could resonate to high school kids, athletes. I wanted something that could be used for college athletes and in the business world. And I've had the opportunity to present to all those areas, and have had positive feedbacks. I work with the Ontario School District on a number of events over there, and have implemented it on that. And so yeah, if there's any interest out there, and obviously if anybody's looking for a keynote speaker to give a presentation, I'd love to do that as well. But coachchristensen.net is where you can find my information.
Awesome.
Excellent.
I'm
I'll make
excited to
sure
get
that's
a copy of the book. So make sure
yes.
everyone else listening gets your copy.
Yes, and
Thank you,
I'll put
guys.
it in the show notes, and I will add it to the blog and make sure that you've got those links available. Now, the fourth thing I wanted to talk about, it was mentioned briefly a little earlier, but Tammy, this is another big week coming up for you releasing something.
So mentioned it earlier, the injured athlete, mental game plan for your recovery, your comeback. I'm sorry. It was delayed this week, but just a little bit of adversity, anything worth having, you have to deal with it. So it's delayed a week, but several people that have read it said it might be the best yet. Not trying to toot my horn, but I think it's a needed tool out there. And Dave, I'm gonna send you a copy. I think you've already
Awesome.
got the right attitude, but you got the ankle injury, so
I could probably use it, but I promise you this: the day I can start rehab, I will crush it.
yes. Yep.
So
And
Awesome.
it is the attitude. And I have research that backs that up, along with various stories of athletes and how they've overcome it. And yeah, I look forward to sharing that with the world. So
awesome.
thank you, Jeff, for
Awesome.
bringing that up.
Absolutely. Well, again, Dave, thank you so much. This was a great interview. Appreciate all that you've
Yeah.
shared. And for all our listeners, there is so much more. Like I said, in the blog and in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to his summit presentation. It was amazing. The book, everything. Make sure to go follow Dave and get all that he's got to offer. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
I
David.
cannot thank you enough. This has been great. You guys are great, and I look forward to being able to collaborate some more with you.
What if in just 4 weeks from now, your daily habits, your mindset, and your results look completely different? Better, sharper, more focused. That's exactly what the 4 Week Win Challenge is all about. It's for high achievers just like you who are tired of starting over and are ready to build routines that actually stick. You'll get the tools, the accountability, and the momentum to crush your goals and build a version of yourself that you're proud of, starting now. So if you're serious about taking the next step, go to jeffhagee.com/win and let's make the next 4 weeks a turning point in your life.
Thank you for joining us on Challenger Deep, Athletes Rising Above Adversity. We hope these stories inspire and equip you to tackle life's challenges head on. Don't forget to visit www.confidentathleteprogram.com/Challenger Deep to get all of our free resources from the book. your copy of our book, and access to 2 free weeks of the Confident Athlete program. Remember, in life, adversity only visits the strong. It stays forever with the weak. Let's rise above together. See you next time.